All right, so we've got all of our meshes aligned the way we want them. We've set all the textures in place, and yet it still seems like we have a lot of work before we end up getting to our final piece of artwork. For example, we've got to set in place a ground plane shadow catcher. We've got to light the scene, and we have to set the camera angle. And that's the kind of stuff that takes a while to do when you're working through a project. We're going to blaze through it because I've done it in advance. I have all the numbers. We'll be, of course, investigating these themes in larger detail in subsequent chapters, but for now, I want you to see how you can do it by the numbers. All right, so I'm going to switch to my image at hand, and it's called betterbars.psd. And for starters here, I will go ahead and turn on the ground plane shadow catcher because we are going to need it. And Photoshop's going to say, hey, you need ray tracing in order to see what's up there. So I'll click OK. All right, the next thing to do is to go ahead and grab my Object Rotate tool, or whatever tool is living down here underneath the shape tools. And now notice that we have these orientation numbers that are available to us when either of the rotate tools are selected. Either rotate the 3D object or roll the 3D object. And then if you have drag the 3D object selected or slide the 3D object, then you get these position values. And those 6 values together determine the exact position of the object in 3D space. Now, if ever you want to get a sense of what 3D space is it ever diagrammed where we are in the world inside of Photoshop? Yes, it is. And for a second, I'm going to go all Tron on you. We're going to go up to the View menu, choose the Show command, and then choose 3D Ground Plane. And now you can see exactly what the ground plane looks like, and you can see your coordinates. So basically, we're very close to the center of the world here because that's where the red line meets the green line, where the x-axis meets the y-axis. And then the z-axis is going up. It serves as the depth of the scene. All right, so my point, of course, is that I went ahead and wrote down the values associated with the star. And here they are for position, because that's what I'm looking at right now. 450 is fine for the x value. That'll do just great. But for the y value, we want 590. And then for the z value, we want negative 820. Go ahead and enter those values, press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac in order to place the star there, right midway through the ground plane. So it's stabbing into the ground at this point. Well, that's because its angle is wrong. So switch over to one of the Rotate tools. And then we need to change one of these orientation values. Y and Z are fine at 0 and 0 apiece, but X needs to be 50, and we'll end up getting this result there. And now we can check if it's actually standing more or less on the ground. It's actually raised just a little bit above the ground, and we can see what that looks like by bringing up the 3D panel, by double-clicking on the layer thumbnail. And with scene selected, as it is, I'll go ahead and change the quality from interactive to ray trace draft, and just wait it out until we get the basic shadow roughed out down there at the bottom of the screen. So you can see where the ground plane is anyway. Now, this lighting is totally wrong. I don't like it at all. But something else that I'm kind of noticing here, as well as these interesting sort of oblong balls that are at the points of the star, I'm noticing I didn't assign any texture to my extrusion on the bottom portion of the star. So I could go ahead and select that rear object to make it active. And actually, you know what? I'm going to use that material drop tool. And I'll go ahead and Alt-click or Option-click inside the letters. Hopefully that'll work for me. And then I'll click along that edge in order to hopefully apply that little bit of darkness there. All right, that looks fine. Now, as I say, the lighting's totally wrong. The camera angle is altogether wrong as well. So I'm going to press the Escape key this time in order to stop the render. Another way to work. And let's go ahead and dial in those camera values by switching to the Camera tool. And in this case, it's the Camera Rotate tool, so we'll adjust the orientation values first, and then we'll dial in the position values. For X, it's negative 136. For Y, it's 360. And then for Z, it is negative 180. All right, let's go ahead and give that a try. Now, we might not be seeing anything at this point because we're pointing the wrong direction. It's very possible we're just looking at a random piece of ground, which does seem to be the case. So we're pretty far away from where we need to be here. That's okay because we're going to go ahead and change our position now by clicking on either the Pan or the Slide tool. And I've got the Pan tool selected. And I'm going to change the X value, not that much, just to 437. And then I'll make that Y value negative 868. And then finally, let's go ahead and change the Z value to 700. And miraculously, that all of a sudden takes us to exactly where we need to be. So just bear in mind, if you're trying to find your way around, that's one way to work. Another way, by the way, is to save off a custom view. So if you like your view and you want to come back to it later, then you can save that view by clicking on this little floppy disk right there and naming it whatever, perfect star view in this case, and then clicking OK. And that way you can just sort of zip around the scene, figure out if everything's where it needs to be, and then come back to this view anytime you like. All right, I'm going to have to click in order to stop the render and make the dialog box go away. The last thing we need to do is establish the lights. Now, the lights are currently, I'm going to go ahead and twirl close all these meshes. We currently have 3 different infinite lights, and I don't want infinite lights this time. I want spotlights. Rather than spending a lot of time going through spotlights, because that's really a subject better suited to another chapter, I'm going to go up here to the flyout menu and choose Replace Lights Presets. And then navigate your way to the O3 Shapes folder. You'll find starlights.p3l. Go ahead and click Load in order to load up those lights. And now we'll go ahead and let that ray trace do its thing, because we have now established exactly the scene. Ooh, with one big exception. I'm going to click here to stop that ray trace. The big exception is the interior of the R. Because I did not use that material drop tool in order to create that texture, I do not have the right gloss and shine values. So I'm going to go ahead and twirl open inner R, click on the front inflation. And by the way, if you ever have problems with clicking on one of these items, try clicking on a mesh and then click on a material. And I'll drop down here to gloss, and I'm going to change that gloss value to 100%. And press return and press escape after that in order to escape out of the render. And then I'll enter a shine value of 75%, and that should take care of that problem there. Now we have a nice shiny interior of the R, and we can let the ray tracing do its thing. Naturally, this is not a particularly long ray tracing process, by the way. It just takes a couple, 3 minutes. However, we are, of course, for the sake of expediency, going to speed up the process. All right, so there's the final scene. The object is rotated and positioned properly. We have 2 spotlights shining down on the object. We've got the perfect camera position, and we fixed the gloss and the shine inside the R. All that's left is to finish off the composition with a few 2D layers, and we'll be doing precisely that in the next exercise.